Hey guys, I'm going to convert this David Clark H10 13.4 headset to an active headset, active noise reduction headset. I've been having this David Clark headset for, well, probably 3 years. I fly a 172. I've never put them on because I use the Bose A20s and my passengers wear the David Clark. However, one day after changing the oil in my airplane, I didn't have my Bose with me, and I took it for a spin, and I realized just how noisy these things are. So in sympathy for my passengers, I'm going to install this kit. I think it will be a lot better experience for them. The instructions are good, but there's a few things that I needed more clarity on. Headsets Incorporated has really good tech support. They'll answer your questions. They'll answer the phone. No waiting, no issues there. And by the way, I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I paid for this myself and decided to do it myself. However, you can send the headset to them and they'll do the conversion for you for about $55, I think it is. You pay the shipping both ways, which probably run you another maybe $40. So the installation by them is really cheap, and it's going to be done right, and they guarantee it for 3 years. So you really can't go wrong. But me liking a challenge, I decided to do it myself. I'm an older pilot now, and I got some shaky hands, but I'm still going to do it. I ordered the kit online, but I did talk to them before I ordered it because there's some things you need to know before you order it. You have a choice between low and high impedance. As I said, I fly the 172, so that's definitely high impedance. I think it's going to be high impedance for most of your GA stuff, but you want to ask them about your particular aircraft. I think the low impedance is more for military type stuff, but I'm not sure. The color diagram that I have in my old shaky hands here is the one that I went by, and I find that the most helpful because it's a complete diagram with the exception of some details on the mic wire. The kit that I ordered was $238 plus $18 flat shipping rate. Headsets Incorporated is located in Amarillo, Texas. Now I thought the kit was going to come with a separate power cable, and I thought you were going to have to drill a hole in the side of the David Clarks, because that's how part of the instructions include 2 different ways of doing it. One with a separate power cable, and one with what they call the AMP cable. I call it the AMP cable. And that cable has everything in one cable going into the original hole where your old headset leads came out of. So it makes it really simple, and that's what they sent, which is great. So you definitely want to pay attention to what you got and the instructions and whatnot before you grab your drill and start drilling holes, because you'll have a hole in your headset that you don't need. So the first step is pretty simple. You can see I'm fiddling around trying to get that foam out of there with my old shaky hands. And basically, all you got to do is just pull everything out of the headset, all of the foam, all the way down to the plastic, and cut the crossover cable on the outside where it crosses over to the other speaker, and just pull that off, get rid of all of that stuff. You're basically going to start from scratch. The only thing you're going to keep in this headset as far as wires goes, and all the foam will be replaced. So if you tear a piece of foam like I did, it won't matter. The only wire that you will keep is the speaker wire, so you want to be careful with that. The mic, I should say. And you also want to keep the wires that are connected to the volume control. You're going to use those. So leave those as long as you can and make it a lot easier while you're trying to solder it. The biggest problem I had was this stuff is 28 gauge wire, and my wire strippers only go to 22. So I ended up having to use a razor blade to skin the wires back. They do provide wires with that's already been skinned, but some of the stuff that you cut, you're going to have to do yourself. It's a simple process of getting everything taken apart. The two speakers, they're single speakers, and you just use a flathead screwdriver on each side and unscrew them. The speakers on the David Clark, the wires that is, there's a screw that's holding them in. So first thing I did, I didn't see the screw, and I grabbed a pair of pliers and started pulling on it, and there's no way you're going to get it out. So you got to unscrew that screw, which is also a flathead. Use a flathead screwdriver. You got to unscrew that screw on each wire before it's going to come out, and you got to back it off pretty good. So that's what I'm doing there. I saved all this stuff in a box after I finished, but I'll probably never need it again. One thing that I was really happy to see is that they've, as you can see there in my old shaky hands, they've included a little plug, and they already have the wire soldered to the little printed circuit board. So all you got to do is just solder your wires coming from the leads to those wires that already exist there, and they've got them stripped for you. They also provide some shrink wrap. I needed a little more shrink wrap than what they provided and some longer pieces, so I used some of my own. Another reason to read the instructions is just right at this little cable where it goes from a single to 3 cables. There's a little switch right there, mono and stereo. It has an M or an S. So you want to put it on mono, in my case. If you have stereo, then of course stereo. I used a piece of wood that I had, which is 6.5 inches long, and it made a good spreader to keep them apart. Now the first step is, which I did, was cut the crossover cable and just get that out and replace it with the crossover cable that's included in the kit. You can cut it both sides. You have no choice but to cut it and then remove the rest of it from the inside, because it's got a clamp, a crimped metal clamp on the inside that you're not going to be able to loosen. And then I threaded the new cable, which you can see there. It's got the ends already stripped back for you and everything. And just thread it through. It's a pretty easy process. Rubber grommet on the headset where the old crossover cable goes through, and then when you pull it out, you're going to put the new one in there. That is a very, very tight fit, for a good reason, because you don't want people jerking on it and pulling the wires out and whatnot. So what I decided to do, was I took some silicone spray, just a regular old silicone, really almost anything you got, but I used silicone, and put it on a Q-tip and just kind of lubed up the inside of that O-ring and the outside of my wire that I was going to slip on, and that made a world of difference. I don't think I could have got it on without doing that. Once you do that and get it started and through the hole, it's an easy process. So I think the little bit of lube there was a good idea, and it kept me from possibly pushing that grommet out of its socket, and then that would be a major issue trying to get that back in. But just a tiny bit of silicone on that Q-tip made a world of difference, and it doesn't make a mess at all. I took pictures as I went. I always do when I'm taking things apart. This is the step where I got a little confused. The original configuration was the crossover cable was shielded, and so was the mic cable. The conversion kit did not have shielded cable. I called Headsets Incorporated, and they said, I don't need it, it's unnecessary, just clip it off. So that's what I did. So there'll be a red and white cable coming out of the mic along with the shield. I just clipped the shield off right there, and the other shield that it was connected to was on the crossover cable. So that gets eliminated anyway. So at this point I've got all the wires fed through on the mic side. So I'm going to jump over to this side and do that side. That's the easiest side. You can see that gray pad that I have in my hand. That goes all the way to the back. You can either put that in before you solder or after. It really doesn't matter. I think I stuffed it in first. Also, you can see I'm test fitting this little pad here. It's not just a cosmetic thing. It does have an audio purpose. I forgot what they call it, but it needs to go in the very last thing before you put your gel seals back on. I unplugged the little plug that separates the speakers, but you could do whatever you want on that. I don't see where it hurt anything to solder it with the printed circuit board attached. It's just the way I did it. It makes it nice because if you had a failure for some reason on one side, one of the printed circuit boards, you could just unplug them and swap them out. You don't have to, go into the soldering process and everything on there. I used a butane lighter to shrink the shrink wrap. Also, I don't know if I mentioned it, but I used the flux on all of my solder joints. I just have better luck using a flux. I've always used a flux. It causes everything to flow better. The solder flows better into the wire, and it just makes a better connection, I feel. Any kind of flux that is lead-free and for rosin core solder or whatever, just most of the fluxes are pretty generic and you can use them on anything. So one thing that may be slightly confusing, and there's the flux I was talking about using a while ago. One thing that might be slightly confusing is that the little printed circuit board, it has a yellow, red, and a black lead, 3 leads. The crossover cable coming in has a white, green, a red, and a black. And that's on the diagram that's provided. The colors on the printed circuit board, they're not showing that, so that's something that they've added on. And they have a separate sheet of paper with the instructions that I believe explains it. I'm not sure it explains the colors. But anyway, the white is not used with the mono system. It may be used with the stereo, I really don't know. But in this particular David Clark mono, the white is just, you could cut it or you could just leave it. I just left it in case I bunged up one of the other wires. I'd exchange it with the good white one, although the colors would be different. But so you got a white, green, a red, and a black in the crossover. The green on the crossover is going to be soldered to the yellow on your printed circuit board leads, and then red on red and black on black. So the only difference is green is going to go to the yellow as opposed to the diagram showing it goes to the printed circuit board. I guess they just had to change the colors when they got the printed circuit boards. That's the way that's the way they came, I guess. So anyway, not a big deal. It's pretty obvious because the white one's not used and the red's red and black's black. So here we go. I've made my 3 solder joints. Now I'm putting in that big piece of foam. I let the wires just come around the back side of the foam. You could punch a hole in the foam and slide the wires through the hole. That would probably make a neater installation, and I would probably do that in hindsight, but I didn't do it. And so you can see everything's ready to go there. All I got to do now is put the speaker in place. Notice the little donut looking oval piece of foam to the right of the speaker. That needs to go on the flange of the speaker. I believe I've already got one installed there on that side. That one's for the mic side. So you can see it's on there. And you just kind of stuff things in place. It's very easy. There's plenty of room. That's not an issue there. And that's the one thing you do have to make sure of, is that the right speaker goes on the right side and the left speaker goes on the left side. They are marked. On the white wire, which is unused, I put a little piece of shrink wrap over the end of it, which I kind of wish I wouldn't have done, because I was short shrink wrap in the end. But and there's really no reason to. It's going to be cut there on that end, and it's cut on the other end. I think if I did it over again, knowing what I know now, I would just clip it down at the base where it comes out of the main wire, you know, where it's skinned back there, and just do away with it. That way there's no chance of it touching any of the electronics or anything on both sides, which would really take probably a you know, it's very unlikely that something like that would happen. So this side is done. You can see that the pad, I forgot what they call that thing, Aereo or something like that. But it does have a purpose, and it needs to be in there. So you can see I'm checking the fit and everything, but that side goes in really easy. The other side went in easier than I thought too. I saw some other things on it that it may be tough to get things in, but I didn't have any problem really. But it is tighter. And taking my spacer out, you can see how close everything is when you don't have a spreader bar like that. And then my gel pads were in good shape. They definitely recommend replacing those, and they're not expensive. Seems like I saw $22, but I'm not positive about that for a set of those things. But they go on real easy, easier than the bows. They just kind of have a little lip where you just slide it over and kind of work it around. So that side is done. That's all there is to do with that. Ready to go. Now we'll move over to the side with the mic. I cut off any little burrs that could possibly come through the shrink wrap or anything like that. So I'm moving over to the left side now. That's the side I run my mic on. Now, you have a red and a white wire coming out of the mic. So the wire coming from the amp cable is going to be yellow and white. So the white goes on white and the yellow goes on red. That's kind of straightforward, but you know, when you mix in two different colors, that's always a little point of confusion for me, just to make sure I got it right. And I think I made a phone call on that to confirm that. And of course, don't forget to put your shrink wrap on before you make the connection, or you'll be doing it over again. Notice that excellent feathering technique I use with my old shaky hands. I found that using a little clip lead or any kind of little clamp helps hold these wires together while you solder them, so you don't bump them and move them and that sort of thing. You just don't want to get them too close to where you're soldering, or it'll act as a heat sink and your solder won't melt properly. Now you can see some white heat shrink there. I had to use some that I had. I was running a little short on the one they provided, but as I said, I kind of wasted some of it also. Left side, you're going to have the white wire that's not going to be used. That's coming over from the crossover cable. And you're going to have a blue wire coming out of the amp cable that's also not used with the mono system. On the volume control, you've got a black, which will attach to the green wire coming out of the amp cable, which is number 3 on the diagram. Excellent diagram, by the way. And then the 2 green wires coming off the audio volume control. One of them goes into the crossover, which is a green wire. The other green wire goes over to the mic, which, as we discussed on the other side, it's the same deal. It's going to be a yellow wire going into your where they're showing a green wire on the mic on that side, on both sides actually. So that's one of the upgrades I could make on the wiring diagram is to show the little plugs and the new lead color for the one green, which is yellow, going into the printed circuit board. But not a big deal, and they do make mention of that in a separate sheet as you get the instructions. Just need to make sure you read all the instructions. And also, if you need some help, it's easy to get a hold of somebody, no waiting, and those guys know this thing inside out, so there's no question about what they're going to tell you. So that pretty much covers all the soldering. It's not the prettiest job in the world, but it will be once I get the gel seal on and hide all that mess. This big gray piece, that big piece of foam that goes in the back, I guess in hindsight I kind of wish I would have cut some slits in it and made it fit a little better, because you got to go over those wires. Well, one thing you got to be careful about that was noted somewhere is the audio connections. You got to be careful when you push on those things. Don't push on them really, and you know, work around that kind of carefully, because I heard they can be pretty brittle maybe on some of the older units. I didn't have any problem with it on mine, but I stayed away from it also. So there's a view of the gray piece that's on there now. You can see that's that, I forgot what they call that, an aerial pad, something like that. But anyway, that's the last piece that goes on. There is those donut pieces that go on the flange. Don't forget to put that on before you put your you know, everything back in. If you forget, you can unclip the little clip that they provide for you and just slip it on, so it's not a big deal. I could have made it easier on myself if I would have cut off some of those unused wires, but in the end I kept them, and I really didn't have much problem getting this piece back on, this, you know, the final speaker piece. Kind of arranged the wires in there and, you know, stuff them in carefully, but it's not as tight as I thought it would be. I had to make a couple of attempts at it and kind of arrange the wires where it would go on relatively easy without using any force, and it did. And then the last step, just kind of holding everything that I've got lined up in place, and then slipping the gel seal on. And you know, you start from one end and work your way toward the other. A little pick, like sort of like a little sharp pick or something, not necessarily sharp, or a little piece of plastic, anything you got that, like, there you go, right there. And that helped a lot for me. I got to be careful you don't punch holes somewhere, but once you get this on, you don't have to worry about the wires moving inside, or the you know, the speaker flange coming out or anything like that, because the gel seals hold everything together really well. They do provide some tape, which you can see over in that plastic bag next to my cell phone up in the right hand side. If you needed to tape those flanges down, they provide that for you, but I didn't use it. I didn't feel like I needed it, and Headsets Incorporated told me that, you know, it's optional. And I could have done a lot better job if I'd have had smaller shrink wrap and paid a little more attention to you know, the compacting things as you solder it together and whatnot. But I still didn't have much of a problem getting things back together and put in. So, and one thing that I'd like to mention is I ended up with 2 extra pieces. I called Headsets Inc. and they didn't really understand exactly what that was or what I was trying to explain to them. I suspect that was a piece that maybe fits another type unit. It was just part of the kit, because the kit covers other headsets other than the David Clark. I'm not sure if that's those little pads that go on the outside of well, it wouldn't fit on, those won't fit on the outside of the, or you know, in that little insert on the outside of the speaker. They're too big to go anywheres on the inside, so I'm not sure what their purpose was, but I went over the order of the foam going in detail with them, and I'm convinced that this is just something extra that I didn't need. There's only 3 pieces of foam that go in the David Clark with the kit. The big piece that goes all the way to the back, the little donut shape that goes against the flange, and then the pad that goes on the very outside of the unit just before you put your gel seal on. I like the battery box. It's easy to open, but be careful until you understand how it opens, because if you start pulling on it and whatnot, you might break something. But you can see it just slides, that little piece, like you can hook that on your belt, and then that piece just slides over. The battery can only go in one way. It's not marked plus or minus, but it just won't fit but one way because of the way the little slots are different sizes. So it's pretty much worm proof as far as that goes, which is good, because if you had to change that while you're in flight or something, and you know, especially if you're hand flying and you don't really have a you know, you got the battery and you're fumbling around with that, you don't have to worry about looking at it. It's going to go one way. They do recommend using a high quality 9-volt battery, which I'm using Duracell here. And I believe I saw somewhere that you can expect about 20 hours use per battery. I'll change them before that. There's a little on and off switch also, so you need to make sure and turn that off switch off if you're not going to be using them, because it would drain your battery. And it goes back together same way, just flat against the back of it and just slide it up. So that's the final product. Now off to the airport to test it out and see if it actually works. I did confirm that it does work. I went out to the airport and I plugged it into my radio. I communicated with airplanes in the pattern. Everything works good. So I got it wired up right. I just need to test fly it now and see just how the noise canceling works and how good it works. I've heard this compared to a Lightstream Sierra. I don't know, but I will do some flying with it and let you know in another video how this works. So for now, I appreciate you watching, and adios.